Let's create an actual project. Yeah, on our own machines. Open up your terminal of choice. No, not yet. I will do some stuff that does require it, but you can do that part later. Do you have a GitHub account? Yeah. Okay. You've used it before? Yeah. Okay. Then you'll be fine, probably. Okay. So I recommend, well, first of all, let's see if this command works. Does ls work? Does the ls command work for everybody?
You said turn on the hyper?
Yeah. Works? Okay, cool. So I suggest, it probably opens in your home directory. So I suggest that you mkdir. Let's make a directory. Mkdir, mkdir. Let's make a directory where we're going to put all our projects for the boot camp. Let's just call it something like XTBC or whatever you want to call it. Don't forget, after you make that directory, you need to change into it. You will not be changed into it automatically. I'm just going to hit X and hit Tab so that I don't mistype it. XTBC is a short name. Some directory names are not short. Don't forget that you can do tab completion. And in here, we're going to create a new directory for each one of our projects. Please do create entirely new projects for each project. Don't just have one gigantic repo on GitHub. Please, please don't do that. So let's make another dir for our project. We got any wizards in here? Wizards or witches? Huh?
I'm a sorcerer.
You're a sorcerer? Yeah. Sweet. We're going to make a spell book. Let's do it. What's your Patronus, Alex? Mine's a giant anteater. You got a Patronus? You got a Patronus, Emily? You don't have a Patronus? Huh? You don't know what that is? Who knows what a Patronus is? That's it? These are the only people who ever read or seen Harry Potter? You know, you're like expecto patronum, and then like a freaking deer comes looking all smoky. What was that? And what were you saying about it? Ah, okay, cool. Yeah. All right. Anyway, expecto patronum. That's a spell. All right. Let's make a spell book. Okay, let's mook a dir, shall we? Let's mook a dir called spell book. After you mook the dir, do not forget to change into the dir with CD. CD space. I'll just start typing spell, hit tab. Yeah, it completes it for me. So I know that I didn't mistype it and that the folder that I typed actually exists. Now, here's the part that isn't going to work for like half of you if my emails over the weekend are any indication. Let's open Visual Studio Code in this folder by typing, well, hey, how do I refer to, say, the directory one level up from where I am right now? Anybody know? ... Anybody know how to refer to the directory I'm currently in? Just one dot. So you can always refer to the current directory by dot. If I said cd dot, it doesn't go anywhere. If I say code space dot, it opens that folder in Visual Studio Code. And it's nice to have your code window scoped to the current folder. If you get command not found for code, and you do have Visual Studio Code installed, for some people, it might just be a matter of opening a new terminal window after you install it. And for some people, it just might not have happened right. So let's try this. Hit Shift Command P on Mac, Shift Control P on Windows. Anytime I say command, I mean control if you're using Windows. So Shift Command P, Shift Control P. And let's type, I think it's shell. Yes. Type shell and you'll see install code command in path. Click that. Then open a new terminal window and try again. And you can totally open a new tab instead of a whole new window too. Yeah. Correct. Try that out. Open a new terminal window. See if it works. And then, yeah.
Can you go back to the list of what we...
The commands?
No, in Visual Studio Code, what we click on?
Yeah. So do Shift Command P or Shift Control P to open this, and then just type shell to search, and it's install code command in path. The issue is there's a shell script called code that it comes with that launches Visual Studio Code, and it might not be in one of the directories that your shell is configured to look for things in. Yeah. Shift Control P doesn't work? Does Control P work? What? With code focused? You have Visual Studio Code open? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I should have clarified. If the command to open it didn't work, open Visual Studio Code manually. That's a command inside Visual Studio Code. So open it from the start menu or whatever.
Okay, going back a little bit.
Yep.
In the one that's right behind us on second, thank you, the one that has the CD and code on it. Once you get to your, already got your directory built, and you're in your directory, then we're fine or what?
Well, we make a directory, and then we want to open Visual Studio Code in that directory.
Okay, and how would you do that then from there? Because you were talking about using code.
Yeah, just type code. Well, let's see. Do a PWD real quick. If you don't mind terribly, can we rename that directory?
Oh, okay. Good exercise. Then go ahead.
Well, name your GitHub repository something else, because when we look at when we review your work, I need to know where I'm looking for it. I suppose I'll figure that out, but it helps me if it's named something similar to what I name it. That's all right. Yeah, so type code space dot. Yeah, type that. No, code. Spell out CODE. Space dot. There you go. So you can close this window.
Okay. That's what I needed to hear you say with that. All right.
Yeah. That way you've got this open, but it's open specifically to that directory. So any new files you create will be inside that directory.
Okay, so now what do you want to rename it? I'll just make another one. Which one did you want to have?
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. You can always rename the GitHub repository something else. Yeah.
Okay.
When you guys said shell, the user settings didn't come up.
It was, and he hit Shift, not just Command P. Huh. That's bizarre. All right, so this is going to make things slightly more inconvenient, but if you just plain can't get the code command to work from the command line, you can just open up code manually and then open up a folder. So you can say open up workspace, I think that works. Open a workspace and just actually select the directory, not a file in the directory. And no, it needs a file. Never mind. Let's see. Open should work. Or, yeah, let's just say file open, and let's pick a directory instead of a file. And that'll achieve the same thing. Just open that folder. The point is we want our code window to be scoped to a particular folder so we do not accidentally create files in the wrong place. Happens all the time if we don't do this, and it'll drive you crazy when you're troubleshooting because you'll see that your file has exactly what mine has, but it's not working because it's just in the wrong place. So let's do another thing. Let me get a browser window over here. Inside Spellbook then, once you've got it, Let's create a new file. We can do it using this. We can do it using Command N, whatever. Hit this little plus button here, and let's make index.html. To hide the sidebar, by the way, if you're interested, Command B or Control B. I'm going to do it a lot because this just isn't that wide. So I'll be hiding it when we don't need it. And let's put some HTML in here. If you just type HTML, no angle brackets or anything, you'll probably get some options to autocomplete it, one of which will look like this. It'll say simple HTML5 starting point. So select that, hit enter. And there you go. And your title is already selected. So let's change the title to Spellbook, or whatever you want. Now it's also conveniently going to have a style sheet and a JavaScript already there, but that's not what we're going to name ours. Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that part. How do
Yep. Just type HTML, and you should have an autocomplete menu that comes up here. And one of the options, what's that? Yeah, the one that says simple HTML5 starting point. So hit enter, and it'll just say HTML. Oops. Just says HTML here, and then on the right it says simple HTML5 starting point.
Yeah.
Change your title. Notice there's already a link to a style sheet and to a JavaScript file. We're going to name our files instead of main. We're going to name it index, just like the HTML. So let's create two more new files. Index.css and index.js. Leave them blank for the moment. Back in index.html, on line 8, where the link is, change it from main.css to index.css. And the script tag we're going to move. Change the script tag to index.js. Then we're going to move it to the bottom of the body instead of in the head. So right here before the closing body tag. Anybody know why? Yeah. That's right. So by putting the script tag at the end, it means everything in the DOM will already load. So if right off the bat we say document, query selector, and some element, if it runs too fast, it won't be on the page yet, and everything will explode. All right. So all I changed in index.html is main CSS to index CSS, main JS to index JS, and I moved it down to the bottom of the body. Now, we want to make sure this stuff works. Let's put an H1 on the page just so we can see that something's there. So I'm not going to type out those angle brackets like some kind of dang animal. I'm going to use a shortcut using something called emit, which is built into Visual Studio Code. If I type H1, I see emit abbreviation. Cool. Now, you might just be able to hit tab to have this work, but for some things you type, there'll be other shortcuts. So I actually set a different keyboard shortcut. I set Control Spacebar to expand emit abbreviations. If you look on the website for the class, Bootcamp 18S2, which is not the one you were originally sent. It's the one you were sent over the weekend. If you go to the section about tools and VS Code key bindings, you'll see how I did that, how I made that my shortcut. Some of these are super, super handy. The image abbreviation one's really handy. So H1, and I will say spellbook. Puts the opening and closing tags there for me.
Okay, how did you use the image? How did you get the image to go for on line 11?
So I just type H1, which hopefully auto-completes image abbreviation. Something pops up like that. I don't have angle brackets or anything. I just type H1. Hopefully a little menu pops up. If it does, you can probably just say enter. But I have a different keyboard shortcut for it.
Okay.
You can always type it up, and it still is kind of convenient. Once I say H1 and hit the closing angle bracket, it puts the closing tag in there for me. So it's still fairly convenient.
Do those syntaxes have to be on the same line? That open and close?
No. Opening and closing tags don't have to be on the same line. And neither do the contents. I could put a space in here like this and some indentation. It'll ignore the white space. In some cases, it takes any amount of white space and puts it down to a single space character. Like if I put each word, and it wants to autocomplete that. That will not show up as line breaks. That will show up as spaces.
How did you get the script to show up on line 18?
I copied and pasted that from the head.
The header?
Yeah. So there was a script source equals main.js up here. And I copied and pasted and moved it down and changed main to index.
Oh, okay.
If you want to type it out yourself, you can totally just hit script and do your image abbreviation and just say source equals index.js. Now we want to try to open this in our browser. There are extensions. I think I fixed the website so that it says an extension that actually works. I may not have, though. View in browser. No, that's the one that doesn't work. Darn. There's another one called open in browser that actually works. But what we're going to do is learn another trick for opening it in the browser. We've already got a terminal window open in this folder, right? And that's where index.html is. Just a second. I don't want him to miss this. So from your terminal, if you're on a Mac, you can type open space index.html. To make sure you're in the folder that actually has that, I will type index, let that autocomplete. Okay, good. .h, tab, open index.html, and it will open it in your default browser. If you're using Windows, it is start index.html instead of open. So open index.html on a Mac, start index.html on Windows. And that'll open that file in your browser. What's that? Spellbook at the top, right?
Yeah.
Not so much? Here's another thing. To make sure that your file is saved, by the way, just in case this ever happens to you, because it'll probably happen to you. Up here, if you've made a change since your last save, you'll see a little dot. That means you haven't saved that file. And I guarantee this will happen to you at some point. You've made a bunch of changes. You don't see it in the browser. You keep hitting refresh. It's because you didn't save one of the files. So that's your clue. Now, I mentioned that we want to use the dev tools because they're great. So let's go ahead and learn how to open them. On a Mac, these are totally different shortcuts on the two machines. On a Mac, you can open up the JavaScript console with Option Command J. Option Command J. Try it a few times. Try to get it under your fingers. We'll be using it a lot. If you can't remember, somewhere there's a way to get to it from the menu. Well, probably the easiest way would be to right-click on the page and say Inspect, which will open up the Elements tab. The console tab's right next to it. That works on either platform. Right-click the page, say Inspect. That'll open the DevTools. But on Mac, the keyboard shortcut to go straight to the JavaScript console is Option Command J. On Windows, it is Control Shift J. Control Shift J or Option Command J. And it'll open up the DevTools. It may open yours at the bottom instead of the side. You can change that if you want. So hopefully you have your H1 here, and it worked. So now I want to make sure that my JavaScript and CSS are actually hooked up right. There's another tab here called Sources. And if I look, I should see index.js and index.css. If you don't see them listed on the Sources tab in your DevTools, that means your links are not correct. So double check your link tag for the style sheet and your script tag for the JavaScript, and make sure they actually point to those files and that those files do in fact exist in the same folder as index.html. Cool? All right. This is a very boring page so far. What if we had a button on the page? Oh, man. So notice I'm keeping the script at the very, very end of the body. Everything else goes above that. If at any time the text is not big enough, please let me know. Don't just squint and be miserable. Everybody's good in the back row? Okay, cool. Because I can zoom very easily. Let's make a button. We'll just make it say, whatever, change text. I don't care what it says. Go over here and refresh. Hopefully it shows up. And then we could totally put some code in our script file, right? Yeah. You can actually put JavaScript inside the HTML document by putting JavaScript inside a script tag like this. But we're not going to. We're going to keep it in a separate file. So you can write code there. If I just want to write a little test, just to make sure this JavaScript's really working, I could say console.log testing. Console.log works in every browser, but it is not part of the standard, and it doesn't work exactly the same in every browser. But the simplest case, console.log some string, works the same way. So if we flip to our console tab, hit refresh, we should see testing show up. There's a lot of other cool commands you can use with console that are very handy. I can do it here too. Console, notice this, in the JavaScript console, you can just type JavaScript commands and have them work. Console.warn. Careful now. Oh, it looks fancy with a little, yeah, fancy. I could say console.error. Ah, cuss. And it's red. So you can do those things to leave yourself little notes. Something bad happens. Console, very handy. And you can just test scripts here. I could type document.querySelector button. Save it to a variable. Uh-oh, undefined. Is that bad? No, it's not bad. Assignments in JavaScript always return undefined, always. They do not return the value that you just assigned. If I check out button, then I see it is actually the button. And check this out. What's this? Put my mouse over it. Oh, it highlights the button on the page. So you can be sure which button it is. Very nice. Totally works. Now that we know that our JavaScript works, I suppose we should make it do stuff. But you know how to make it do stuff, so that's going to be your job. Before we go, let's make a Git repository. Who has not used Git before? Okay. We're going to go into more detail about how it works on another day. For now, we're just going to create a repository. So we're just going to follow simple steps. So in your spellbook directory, type git init. Make sure you are in the right directory before you do this. Do not create a Git repository in your home directory. Bad things happen. All right, git init. Initialized empty Git repository. Cool. In this folder, spellbook/.git. So it turns out it creates a new folder called .git. I'm going to open that in Finder just to show it to you real quick. So I could say open.git. On Windows, that would be start.git. Just open it up, see what it looks like. All right. It said empty Git repository. This doesn't look that empty. There's stuff in here already. So your Git repository, in case you've ever been curious, is saved inside a hidden folder called .git. And inside there, you will find all previous revisions, among other things, as well as your configuration. So I have a Git repository now. Very good. So now I can commit stuff. So type git add space dot. That will add all of your files to Git.
I have a question about that Git.
Sure.
I have a desktop
Yeah.
option on that. So does it matter? Or will
If you can figure out how to do the same commands, that's fine. But for creating a new repo, you might want to use this for right now, because I don't remember how to create a new repository in GitHub Desktop. For committing and stuff, it might be easier for you. But let's do git add dot. If I check git status, you'll see changes to be committed and those 3 files, which I'll say new file. So now they are staged to be committed, but they are not yet committed. They are part of the repository now, but I haven't given them a label. So for that, I will type git commit -m for message. We will always put messages with our GitHub commits. We will put our messages in double quotes, and we will follow some nice conventions for these that we'll talk about tomorrow. For right now, let's just say initial commit. Now we have a Git repository. And before we go real quick, if this doesn't work, you can do it in the afternoon, and Dana can help you. Don't forget, in the afternoon, when you go over there to work on your homework, you can totally Slack her, and she'll come help you. Let's create a repository on GitHub and sync it with this thing. All right. Everybody have this much? Got it committed? Let's type git log and see. There we go, initial commit. To get out of git log, hit Q. Now go to github.com. Microsoft is acquiring GitHub, by the way. Very interesting. Just announced. CEO of Microsoft has a blog post. All right. Hit the little plus. New repository. So let's make a new repository. And let's name it something like Spellbook. So, Leon, at this point, you can name your GitHub repository Spellbook, even though you named it for old or something else. Doesn't matter. They don't have to match. But that way I can find it when I look for it.
okay. So I take it each one of these you're gonna have a different name on, right?
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. So for right now, let's make a repository name called Spellbook. And then you don't need to change any of the other options. We'll make it public. We don't need to initialize it with a README because we already initialized it. Hit Create Repository, and it'll give you several options. quick note for you on the Wi-Fi network you're using, SSH will not work. So all of those steps were kind of for nothing as far as class is concerned, though SSH keys are really cool. So make sure you change this to HTTPS if you haven't. Click this little thing, change it to HTTPS. Then you'll never have to click it again. It'll be HTTPS for the rest of the time. I'm going to use SSH because I can. It'll give us an option to create a new repository on the command line, but we already did that part. Or push an existing repository from the command line, and it wants you to copy these two things. Use the little copy button so you don't accidentally copy the wrong thing. Paste them in. That's two commands. Git remote add origin and git push-u origin master. We'll talk about exactly what they're doing. But in short, the first command, git remote add origin, tells it, okay, our remote is going to be GitHub. It's going to be this GitHub repository right here. Git push-u origin master means take a copy of my current branch locally and sync it with the origin on the master branch on origin, and origin is GitHub. -u means use this branch from now on. I never want to have to type that again. If you get something about an error that includes ref spec, anybody get that one? Okay, cool. If it works, then you can go back to GitHub, refresh this page, and you'll see your repository with those 3 files.